Is Colorado going to lose to Kansas? Is BYU going to lose to Arizona State? Are we going to fly into even deeper chaos? This is Locked On Big 12.
You are Locked On Big 12, your daily podcast on the Big 12 Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Happy Wednesday, everybody. Welcome to Locked On Big 12. I'm Drake Toll from America's #1 Big 12 podcast, Locked On Big 12. Thank you for making this show your first listen every single day. Off the punch, Colorado, Kansas. I joined TJ Pittenger of College Football Addiction. We talk about who's going to win that game. Then in the middle segment, BYU, Arizona State. We talk about the trajectory of all four of those teams this season and their matchups. We'll end the show with West Virginia. We'll have a new football coach next season, not because Neil Brown was fired, but because he left and went to UMass. Yeah, I think it might actually happen. I'll explain why. And if you hit subscribe, I get to keep my job. Without further ado, Colorado, Kansas. Who wins this?
Drake, looking back at the Utah game, did anything there surprise you at all, or did it go exactly kind of how you thought it would with Colorado and Utah?
I think the total surprise from this game is that Colorado is showing more and more dynamic ways in which they can win football games. I want to go back to a message I gave you in weeks prior. Foot in mouth for Colorado. I mean, I legitimately thought that this team would be 4-8, 5-7 this year, and I was completely wrong, as were so many analysts. And happy to admit, on behalf of those who cover the Big 12, this is massive for our conference to have a football team that can dominate you, a football team that can come from behind, a football team that can dominate you, watch you close the gap, and then dominate you all over again. And that's what they did against Utah, showing that there is not a point where you can just pack it in against Colorado and say, yeah, we got them right where we want them. They're going to give up. We got them right where they want them. They're going to fall apart. No, that from that Baylor Hail Mary to domination of weeks past to this Utah game where they had to turn it back on in the fourth quarter and absolutely did. Colorado is as dynamic as they come, specifically in the Big 12. And to me, if you had to pick a conference champion today, it's the Buffs, which shocks everyone. But at this point, I'd be stupid to bet against them.
Yeah, they certainly seem like the team to beat. Their opponent, Kansas, they've done this now 2 weeks in a row. A team plays BYU, and then a team plays Colorado. First Utah, now Kansas. Thoughts on Kansas coming into this thing? Obviously a very emotional win to upset BYU, to knock off the then favorite, the undefeated team that maybe hadn't been playing super well, but Kansas gets a big-time emotional win there. Does that propel them on to play this one really well, or is there a letdown? You wouldn't think there's a letdown against Colorado ever, but just thoughts on Kansas coming in.
Kansas is as dialed in as it truly gets right now in this conference, right there with Colorado. If you ask me the teams that are playing the best, it's Baylor, Colorado, Arizona State, and Kansas. And the only one of those teams that was a true contender preseason was the Jayhawks, and they're playing like a Big 12 championship team. The problem with that statement is they are 4-6, 3-4 in conference. That loss to Illinois, the loss to UNLV, they still exist on the record. If Colorado was playing this game 6 weeks ago, the Buffs win by 14-21 going away. But now you're on the road, you're in Arrowhead, and somehow the Jayhawks have momentum, and they're playing for that 6-6 record. There are schools in this country, Nebraska comes to mind, that 6-6 is okay. Michigan 6-6, all right. Auburn 6-6. They don't care about the Tax Slayer Bowl. Kansas does. This is not a football program that's historically been very good. They want to hit that 6-win mark for their fan base. Colorado stands in their way, but Kansas is very dangerous right now because of what they did defensively against BYU last week, and because the offense has turned it on now enough to win games including a top 10 road victory against BYU and a top 20 victory against an Iowa State team that's petering out. Maybe Kansas is just a beneficiary of playing teams that are playing poorly right now, but by virtue of that, the Jayhawks are red hot.
Kansas, you mentioned defensively, played really well against BYU. Certainly a whole different test taking on Colorado this weekend. How effective do you think they can be at limiting not just one of the best offenses in the conference, but one of the best offenses, some of the best weapons in the country?
It's so tough, TJ, to really tell what you'll get out of Kansas, because if you just read the analytics for the season, their defense is 100th in the country on third and fourth down success. They are right now 53rd in the nation against the pass, which is not going to get it done against Shedeur Sanders and Travis Hunter and Jimmy Horn Jr. But those are so skewed because they were terrible those first 7 games. You ask me Kansas analytics the last 3 weeks, they're dangerous. They're scary. They have one of the best secondaries in the Big 12. If you take the sample size of the month of late October into November. And with that, it's like, okay, am I going to get early season Kansas, the Kansas I've been getting? But even still, can you stop the onslaught of Colorado? I don't think the Jayhawks can hold them under 30. Certainly not.
What has the Kansas playing there at Arrowhead this weekend? We know how that Colorado brand has been around the country. What do you expect from a crowd on this one?
I think that it's a perfect opportunity for Colorado fans to show up and pack out a good portion of this stadium. And the reason being, we have not seen Kansas come close to selling out Arrowhead or filling up Arrowhead. And you're not going to at 4-6. And now, when we've talked about the national brand that is Colorado, I get it's not a super close drive from Boulder to get out to Kansas City, but the national brand they're starting to build, they get Fox's big noon kickoff week in and week out. Can you show up, sell those tickets, and not just have the eyeballs on a TV screen? I think the answer is yes. Colorado should have a pretty good contingent in Arrowhead, showing this team that, hey, we're not just T-shirt fans. We're not just Deion Sanders fans. We're Colorado fans, and we can do this. We can prove that the football culture here is revived after a very rough last 15 years. I expect that kind of passion out of Colorado this week.
Is there thoughts on, Daniels is playing better too. You mentioned the defense, but I think the offense is certainly looking better too. Again, a defense in Colorado that is certainly much improved from what we expected in the offseason and certainly improved from where they were last year. They still have, they still give up their points here and there. It almost feels like they get not disinterested, but they start really strong, like you mentioned. Maybe somewhat in the middle, they struggle, and then they turn it back on late. But thoughts on Daniels and really how he's playing right now against that Colorado defense?
Yeah, Daniels looks really good. This is what we were promised preseason, and a guy that I thought would be the best quarterback in the conference. To go back to that Iowa State game where he was only 12 for 24, but his 300 some odd yards and a couple of touchdowns as well propelled them to that victory, 45-36 against a top 20 Iowa State team. Coming into this week, the Colorado defense in its entirety, its secondary especially, has been much better than we expected preseason. They're 22nd in the country efficiency-wise against the pass. That bodes well if you're Colorado. I think when I really start to boil down what this game comes down to, is who has the most momentum. There's a reason that ESPN only has Colorado with a 55% chance of victory. They're 8-2, number 16 in the country. Kansas is 4-6, 3-4 in conference play. But if I look at Colorado's last 3 games, they're all double-digit wins. The Jayhawks, while they've been playing well these last 2 games, I don't think they have the Jimmies and the Joes to put up with a Colorado team who has 4- and 5-star players that are currently playing like 4- and 5-star players. The Buffs have the advantage still, despite you ask about Jalen Daniels, I still turn it somehow into how Colorado has the advantage against Kansas this week.
Is there anybody that can rip the Heisman Trophy out of Travis Hunter's hands at this point?
Yeah, there shouldn't be until anybody from Jackson Dart to Jonty to whoever starts playing both sides of the football. Then we'll talk. When they start pulling interceptions down and then rushing touchdowns in and then catching for 50 yards, then we'll have a conversation. Otherwise, Travis Hunter is the Heisman Trophy winner, and he's the leading receiver, approaching 1,000 yards receiving, and is pulling down interceptions on defense. That is stunning. What he's doing, we haven't seen in college football in decades.
Seeing people argue for guys that took 6 snaps at wide receiver or had 2 rushing touchdowns and played defense, and I'm just like, all right, man, we're not playing this game. So it sounds like you're picking Colorado in this one. You're leaning that way. Do you have a score on it?
I'm going to go Colorado, and one of the biggest points here of why I'm going to go with the Buffs, I've already mentioned the momentum factor. Also, if Kansas wins, this is complete chaos for the Big 12. It couldn't be worse for the conference if the Jayhawks continue to be these world beaters. I need Colorado to win. I think they get it done. They put up 34 in this one. Kansas fights. They put up 26. Give me 34-26, an 8.1 score victory for the Buffs.
I like it. Yeah, I think it's close-ish, 1 score. I think Kansas really does come to play. I think Colorado is just a little too much.
Got to pause you for a second to tell you about Mint Mobile. I love a great deal as much as the next guy, but I'm not going to jump through hot coals just to save a couple of bucks. Has to be easy. No hoops, though. No BS. When Mint Mobile said it was easy to get wireless for $15 a month, I was like, that's not true. But it is. The longest part of this process was the time it took for me to cancel my other phone plan. To get started, mintmobile.com/lockedoncollege. There you'll see right away 3-month plans are $15 a month. All plans, high-speed data, including an unlimited plan, nation's largest 5G network as well. To get this new customer offer, your new 3-month premium wireless plan just for $15 a month, go to mintmobile.com/lockedoncollege. mintmobile.com/lockedoncollege. Cut your wireless bill to $15 a month at mintmobile.com/lockedoncollege. $45 upfront payment required, equivalent to $15 a month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Additional taxes, fees, and restrictions apply. See Mint Mobile for details. That is Mint Mobile.
Let's talk a team that one team seems to be heading one direction, the other seems to be going the other way. BYU. Are they falling off a little bit? ASU kind of on the rise. Are these two ships passing in the night, or what are your thoughts on this matchup, big picture, before we dive into it?
Well, if you asked the analytics even last week, they would have said BYU would win by 7 to 10 points, and they had a 70% chance of victory on the road, and that has completely been flipped on its head. While BYU is still favored via the computer, they're not. When you ask ESPN's FPI at 56%, or you ask Vegas, who has Arizona State by 4. Big picture-wise, this is for a Big 12 championship, and if BYU loses, they might be out of that Big 12 championship, and what a disaster that would be for a team that was 9-0, looking forward to playing in Arlington against somebody, anybody, whoever, when they were 12-0, giving the Big 12 a chance at 2 college football playoff teams. Even a BYU loss, they would have gotten in as an at-large. But the second you get loss number 2 in this conference, you're out of the college football playoff picture. And this week, you have an Arizona State team that's playing very good football and a BYU team that 3 out of the last 4 weeks has not been good. They had 2, I don't want to say miracle victories, but close to it against Utah and Oklahoma State, then lost to 3-6, unranked Kansas at night at home. I can't imagine something much worse for BYU this late in the year, but if there is something worse to imagine, it's a loss this week to Arizona State.
Yeah, I want to give Arizona State their flowers in a second, because we did talk about Kenny last week, and obviously they were phenomenal to watch, and their story has been a lot of fun as well. Very unexpected. But is BYU, like, to me, I feel bad even saying this because the BYU fans are so nice, I feel like, but it doesn't feel like, I've never been a big believer in, you had a loss, now that'll wake you up, that'll re-energize you. It felt like BYU is kind of Miami, right? Very different programs, very different teams. But their loss to me isn't like let's re-energize. It's just like their issues are their issues, and their issues finally caught up with them. Or am I reading that wrong? Like, do you think that this may be playing a team that now everybody's doubting BYU? Do you think they can rebound from it?
Yeah, they certainly can. There was a lot of doom and gloom around how BYU lost to Kansas, only scoring 13 points. And the doom and gloom comes from the fact that BYU wasn't, again, their former selves in the weeks prior. This is a compounding issue for the Cougars, where they had a couple of wins that were close, and then they finally lost. Had they been blowing everyone out, had they been in Indiana, per se, let's say Indiana this week loses to Ohio State by 6 points. They've been dominating everybody. That 6-point loss for Indiana, they've still got momentum. For BYU, the way they lost to Kansas, the way they've been playing, momentum is not on their side. But, TJ, the good news for those obviously very nice Cougars fans is if they do win this week, that loss kind of goes away. They win the Big 12 championship. That loss doesn't matter. You have a mulligan. It's a 12-team playoff. You still get a first-round bye.
So Arizona State has been an incredibly fun story in a season of incredibly fun stories in the Big 12, at least for some teams, maybe not the teams we expected this year. But, man, Kenny Dillingham is so much fun, and his team has totally taken on that personality. You don't have to look any further than their quarterback or their running back to see that. What do you like about this matchup from them, and can their offense kind of keep rolling against a BYU offense that has struggled?
Yeah, for Arizona State, I love Cam Scatterbo, obviously, but Sam Levitt has been the big surprise. We kind of knew coming into the year that Scatterbo would be dangerous. For Levitt, there was a huge question mark. The kid was born in 2004, and he's captaining an Arizona State team that wasn't supposed to be very good. They could have gone 3-9, 4-8. None of us really would have batted an eye. And BYU is also in that same category. So 2 teams that have overperformed and 2 quarterbacks that have certainly overperformed. On the Arizona State side, again, for Sam Levitt, approaching 2,000 yards this this season, 17 touchdowns to just 4 interceptions. Not only has he at times been a game manager, he's been a game changer. Earlier in the year, I would have told you, hey, Sam Leavitt does enough to get Arizona State the win, but I think he's developed now into a dangerous quarterback that can go lead you down the field, win a game, if that's what's asked of him this week against BYU. As far as Arizona State grades offensively, efficiency-wise, 15th running the football, 24th throwing the football, top 25 in both categories. The real question is, can they put up with a BYU defense that was great last week? They're 17th against the run, 11th against the pass, efficiency-wise. It's immovable object, unstoppable force when it comes to Arizona State offense, BYU defense. That gets very interesting. And then again, you mentioned BYU's offense has struggled, especially passing efficiency in efficiency categories, and Arizona State's defense is top 25 against the pass and the run. That's pretty good.
I don't know if anything is shocking in college football this year with everything, with everything shocking, nothing shocking is kind of how I feel like this football season has gone. But how surprised were you with, I know they got out to a big lead and they had to just kind of hold on for as long as they could. But how surprised were you with Arizona State to be able to score the way they did early on Kansas State? Yeah,
I thought it was great that they jump out 21-0, and we're all looking around kind of as those of us who considered ourselves the big-time college football followers saying, all right, yeah, it's 21-0, but they're at Kansas State. There's an entire second half to play, and Kansas State's really good. Avery Johnson's very dynamic. They're going to make this a ball game. And Kansas State didn't really make it a ball game because of the defense of Arizona State. So while we talk all season long about those big names offensively, Cam Scatterbo, of course, is going to be at the forefront of when you're having a conversation about Arizona State. Their defense last week was perfect when it needed to be, forcing 3 turnovers against Kansas State. The offense returns the favor, 36 minutes and 36 seconds of possession time, forcing Kansas State to 23 minutes and 24 seconds on their end. That's a pretty darn big gap right there. That's just cohesion between offense and defense, and a total domination for Arizona State, who was able to turn Kansas State over when it mattered most.
Who is if BYU is going to get this back on the right track and find a way to, I don't want to say salvage, because it's still really a good year. It may fall short of expectations if they can't win their next 2. But who is your X factor for BYU getting this thing turned around against Arizona State this week?
It's going to have to be Jake Retzlaff. It's a cop-out answer to give the quarterback, but it's certainly the case this week because that passing game has gone down and down and down week in and week out under Aaron Roderick. They're 38th in the country in efficiency after prior being in the top 20 throwing the football. Jake Retzlaff has to step up and go win the game himself. We can't make the excuse, well, the OC put us in a bad spot, or we didn't run the football enough, or the offensive line didn't play well. We've seen Retzlaff against Utah and Oklahoma State put the team on his back in final drives. He's got to do it for the entirety of the game. If he does, BYU's in a good spot to win. I'm telling you, TJ, BYU fans will make up 40% of the stadium on Saturday. That's going to be a big boost for Retzlaff and company.
You heard Kenny talking about it, saying, "Hey, we need you to buy. If you're selling a ticket, make them show you a hat, make them show you a shirt.
Yeah.
Make sure it's Arizona State fans." I'm interested to see exactly that, what that crowd looks like, because Kenny realizes it. He realizes what's coming. Do you have a prediction in this one? I know it's a little early in the week, but just thoughts on how this one ends up going down.
Yeah, I think this is a fun one. I'm going to go with BYU, 27-24. This stays lower scoring, but I guess for a BYU State, they take 27 at this point. Give me BYU by far less than a touchdown, by the hair on their chin again. It seems to be the way they love to win football games right now.
I'm going to go the same score the other way, just to make it fun. Just to make it fun.
That's great.
Kenny was at Florida State, obviously then Oregon, so I feel like that's that shade of garnet and gold that he wears is a little bit of relief from me.
Break of the action to tell you about Skylight Frames. Skylight Frames is the place that you go this holiday season when you can't quite find the right gift for that person who lives so far away this holiday season. You don't know what to get them, and you miss that loved one that's far away, wish they could be close to you. Skylight Frames is here. We have the perfect gift. That Skylight Frame is a touchscreen digital photo frame with your whole family able to love it. Upload thousands of photos with your phone and watch them appear in seconds. Easy to use. Setup takes less than 60 seconds. Seamless sharing. Invite friends and family to easily share their photos via the Skylight mobile app. Bam, add new photos straight from your phone or anywhere, and just bam, they're there across the country. Fastest, easiest way to keep loved ones in the loop. And now, as a special limited time offer for our listeners, get $20 off your purchase of a skylight frame when you go to skylightframe.com/college. That's skylightframe.com/college. Get $20 off your purchase now at skylightframe.com/college. That is Skylight Frame. Visit them today for the perfect holiday gift. Today's show also brought to you by FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. It's where I'll go this week to say Colorado will beat Kansas by 3 points. They'll win on the road. There's not going to be chaos, hopefully. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers can bet $5. Get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place bets, live bets even on NFL, all in one place, and college football. Get a hunch in the middle of a game, FanDuel's there for you. Check out the latest stats you like, play-by-play, so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. That is FanDuel. Visit them today. Make some money this weekend. College football and the NFL await. That is FanDuel.
West Virginia, not super thrilled with where they're at right now. They had a chance last week. Now, it was an outside shot, but they had a chance last week at home against Baylor to where if they could have won that game, they'd have been in the mix. Now, again, they just still needed chaos. They just still needed a lot ahead of them. But they got embarrassed by Baylor at home and didn't do anything in the second half. And so Baylor, one of the hotter teams in the conference right now, there's no doubt about it. But fans not thrilled in Morgantown. And a lot of fans want Neil Brown gone. Is that the way you're reading things?
Yeah, fans certainly want Neil Brown gone right now. And the reason why is, even go back to Dana Holgerson, West Virginia is used to winning. They win. They go to New Year's Six Bowls. They shock the country. They surprise people. They recruit outside of the state to bring in players who become these proud members of West Virginia Mountaineer football. And what you don't get right now is the classic West Virginia Mountaineer football. And maybe above all else for Neil Brown is, to me, as somebody who is on the outside but respects what that program has done for decades and decades, they have one of the highest winning percentages all time in the Big 12. Some of the most wins of any Big 12 program. And now this, with a head coach who doesn't represent that blue-collar, coal mining country. I don't look at Neil Brown and see the head coach at West Virginia. And if he won more consistently, maybe I would, or maybe he'd get a free pass. But right now he doesn't. And at this point, with the latest rumors, UMass just fired its coach. Seldom do you hear, a Power 5 guy might leave his head coaching post to go to a school like UMass. But he played college football there. He coached there post-grad as an assistant. And if I'm Neil Brown, I've been hearing ad nauseum for year after year, fire Neil Brown. You got fans that are trying to buy airplanes that have a banner hanging on the back of it during a football game that says fire Neil Brown. You can't show up and win the big games. If I'm him, for the sake of my family, for the sake of me, for the sake of just not having to listen to this anymore, take the lowest stress job maybe in the country. You have no expectations at UMass, and it's a possibility with West Virginia likely sticking with him due to the high buyout. There's a possibility he at some point just says, you know what, I can't take this any longer. It's not worth it. And UMass wouldn't be a bad landing spot to effectively rehab your career.
Yeah, I mean, and it's not, it's certainly not heard of, but it's not impossible. Remember Louisville? I mean, look who's coaching Cincinnati right now. Now I know that they're in the Big 12 now, but when he stepped down, I don't think they had quite made the switch yet. I mean, they were going the next year, but no shots at Cincinnati, but that's still, Louisville to Cincinnati, maybe a little bit of a step down. So I do guess it's possible, but do you think he would actually do it?
Yeah, I wouldn't, money-wise, that'll be the big comment, is that, it would make no sense from a money standpoint, but just seeing the way that he interacts with the media, seeing the way he interacts in the off-season, too, when he's talking to Big 12 media days, the guy seems like a pretty tender dude, and I don't get the Kirby Smart gruff, this just good old ball coach vibe from Neil Brown. He's quirky. You go back and watch at Troy, he was in university-sponsored music videos, and you're watching a guy who doesn't necessarily shy away from the social media era of college football in those stunts that he was a part of. And with a guy who's just that aware of everything, I know the rhetoric from the fan base weighs on him. And when this year didn't exceed the expectation they had preseason from so many people internally and so many fans externally, and when last year you were watching him get mayo dumped on his head, now this year they're somehow underdogs at home against 4-6 UCF, and the stadium will very likely be empty at 3:30 this Saturday. If I'm Neil Brown, I might just be looking for an escape no matter what that price tag looks like. The dude's made a whole lot of money in his life. He's going to be okay.
Yeah, and typically what happens is there are conversations that happen that say, hey, you don't want me here. Mm-hmm. I don't want to be here. You either owe me a lot of money or let's come to an agreement. He will get it would shock me if he just like forewent any buyout money.
Right,
Usually they're going to make him not whole, but they're going to pay him a little bit to walk away. It'll be a price savings for West Virginia. And I think it would make fans happy. I mean, fans were at the beginning of the year saying like, hey, if we don't go 8, 9+ wins, like we need to get things together. And they have at times looked fine, but against anybody with a pulse, they've really struggled this year. And, Garrett Green, I don't think is in the spot that they want him to be. Like there's a litany, a whole list of issues. And again, can he save it? Like, is he really going to turn it around? To me, that's the big question. Is I understand the cost for West Virginia. I understand that they don't have pockets that are as deep as Ohio State or Georgia's or whatever to be able to just fire anybody at any time. But I also just wonder, man, like, what is your cost in revenue dropping, right? Like with fans not filling stadiums, what is your cost to your boosters? What is your cost to your NIL? And all those things together, to me, feels like it would be about the price of a buyout. So I don't know. If you don't think he can turn it around, like if he's not the guy long term, it's better to cut bait, right, and stop fishing in these muddy waters.
Yeah, and I'm looking at a West Virginia recruiting class coming in, and those that are in the, looking for the next couple of years, and I just don't see enough. You say, oh, we got to hold on to him because he's got so many recruits that are going to play well for him. You look at a Dave Aranda who effectively saved his job via recruiting, or a Joey McGuire at Texas Tech who does such a good job recruiting. They'll give him a couple of years to build a program there. And for Neil Brown, buddy, you've had your 5 years. I mean, you've got to at some point be able to bring in the out-of-state talent and land the highest recruited in-state talent. There may only be 2 or 3 guys that deserve a spot on your roster that come from West Virginia that can help you compete. But as it sits, you're not doing enough off the field to hold your job. You're not winning on the field. You're 5-5. And granted, 4-3 in conference play is not bad for a UCF, for a Cincinnati who's adjusting to the Big 12. But you've been here. You've had a chance to get your guys in to instill your mindset to trust. You asked the fans to trust the climb. They've trusted this for long enough, and it just hasn't worked. I don't see where overnight in the offseason, somebody snaps their fingers and all of a sudden Neil Brown is the answer for West Virginia. They're prolonging the obvious to me. And TJ, to shoot you straight here, West Virginia is proud of all of its sports programs, and basketball also not very good right now. I mean, they need something to root for. That's a state that thrives off of this. There isn't much. I mean, I grew up in Valonia, Arkansas. We didn't have much. We tied ourselves to college football, to college basketball, to anything good. West Virginia is that kind of state. And this guy's not delivering for them. At some point, the blue-collar fans who are going to have to support your NIL are not going to give money to who they think is a used car salesman.
So it's November 19th. We're recording this almost to Thanksgiving. Pull up from midcourt and give me the next coach at West Virginia.
I mean, there were murmurs. I gave it earlier this year. The Nick Saban conversation is out there, right? And
Jimbo? Is Jimbo out there?
The Jimbo conversations that you use the Mac Brown. I think that's the one you go to. Say, hey, Mac Brown went to North Carolina, so you never really know. Is there a retirement job out there for Saban? There are answers, responses, reasons for a guy like a Saban or a Jimbo to go there. Does it ultimately happen? Probably not. But you hired the really successful head coach of Troy in Neil Brown. So can you dip back into the mid-major bucket? No. I think from this point, you need to go with a very experienced coordinator who's a former head coach. Maybe you go up to Boston and you say, hey, look, you've won a couple of games up here. Maybe you travel over to the ACC or a smaller league and grab a guy who's been a head coach for a long time and rope them into the action in Morgantown.
I like it. Drake, where can people follow you? Where can they find your work?
Yeah, at Drake Seats Hole on Twitter or at LO Big 12. And wherever you find your podcasts, Locked On Big 12.
Awesome. Thanks, buddy.
Always a pleasure. Well, that'll do it. Neil Brown, UMass. Come back tomorrow. We're going to give you some best bets in the squad show. This has been and always will be Locked On. Thanks for making it your first listen every single day. Dose Grande.